Welcome, welcome, welcome to the third episode of A Brief Gaze into the Abyss.
Ooh, third.
Whoop, whoop. Third episode. If this is your first time hearing us, we are a podcast dedicated to the strange things people believe in aliens, the occult, and big feet. The plural, multiple big foots. Just to name.
Oh, not hobbits?
Ooh. I wonder, yeah, we can really get in deep into the difference between Big Feet and Hobbits. I'm sure there's a lot of fun fan fiction.
Oh, God, yes.
So that's just a taste of some of the stuff we'll be covering, and some of the highbrow commentary you'll get on our podcast. I'm Zach, and I am joined tonight by the wonderful Mystic Nikki.
Ooh, Mystic Nikki, I like it.
It took me 30 seconds. I couldn't think of any spooky in letters.
Spooky, and I'll have to think of something.
Ooh, so right now you're Mystic Nikki. And my hope is that at the end of this podcast, no matter what happens, that you'll have a good segue to start your career as a palm reader.
A palm reader.
Call me now, Mystic Nikki.
Well, I want to be Ambassador Nikki, Ambassador Merlin Nikki.
Ooh.
Okay, the ambassador to, I guess we'll say Orion. I don't know.
Pick a star. I'm ambassador to BB 78910. All right. And our third co-host is being held down tonight because his bosses are likely reptilians who are threatened by his truth bombs that he's laying on our podcast. But I'm sure he will definitely be back with us. Philip will be back with us on our next episode. So for all of our philophiles, just hang with us because it's just going to be the two of us. But without Philip here tonight, that means I am drinking for two. All right. And today, Nikki and I will be covering the wickedest man in the world, the beast, the master of darkness, Aleister Crowley.
Whoop, whoop. I suppose I was supposed to say something there.
No, it worked. So we're actually not strictly covering Aleister. What we'll be focusing on is really his 1917 book, Moonchild. And
thank God. If I had to do a full episode on him, I would just shoot myself. Though we probably will be doing one at some point.
Yeah, just buckle up. I don't love Aleister Crowley, but I really do love the occult. And one day I will find multiple days in the future, I will find multiple more ways for you to force you to read about Aleister Crowley and his ilk.
Yay. So, no, I do. I enjoy the whole magic thing, but yeah, just don't enjoy him.
He's what some might call an acquired taste.
Maybe that's it.
Like one might acquire taste for poop. So before we get started, I want to make sure that we cite the books that we use to research to give you this podcast. First was Aleister Crowley, Magic, Rock and Roll, and the Wickedest Man in the World, which was written by Gary Lachman, who's actually in Blondie. And then he became a occult researcher. So Nikki, if he ever comes to one of our cities, we should definitely go see him speak. We need to get a Google alert. I'll come down and see you, and we'll go hang out in a room with a bunch of magicians.
Well, I don't know about that.
Get your cloak ready. Uh, our second book that we're citing is also starts out with Aleister Crowley, but the subtitle for this one is Man, Myth, and Magic, written by Stephen Ash. And then last and least, we'll say least,
Yeah, at
is
least.
Aleister's own Moonchild, which is the correct way to pronounce that, I'm sure. So, Mystic Nikki, do you want to explain what a Moonchild is for everyone?
Sure. So, Moonchild is the end result, basically the baby, which comes from the demonization of a fetus. So basically, they believe that uh, souls are fighting over your fetuses. And so the whatever, and because there are so many just like normal ones, those are the ones that generally win these wars. So they wanted to attract like a powerful demon to their fetus. So this was a series of rituals to bring in the strongest demon into the child that will be born.
Oh my god. It sounds so cool, Nikki.
You
I
want a
want
demon baby?
more than anything. I mean, if you have to have a baby, like I just went to a restaurant with my wife and we had dinner together. It was delightful. There was a ton of babies in this restaurant. And they were, I assume, all normal babies. I didn't ID any of them, but they look like normal babies. But my personal belief is if any of those babies were demon babies, my dining experience would have been enhanced.
Yes.
So,
I'm sure it would have been.
so yeah, I I don't know if you guys can tell. We're not super fans of this book. It was honestly quite a hard read, wouldn't you
Yes,
say, Nikki?
very, very difficult to get through. It's just, I mean, for one, it's
Yeah.
like slightly old English, so that doesn't exactly flow extremely well. Though I kind of blamed it on that at first when I've read it, but then like I read Jack Parsons' The Book of Babylon, which we'll get into later, but I didn't have any problem reading it. Like it just flowed like regular old English. So I'm like, maybe he's just a terrible writer, which is what I guess I need to give him more of a chance because he wrote many things. So, but anyway, yes, it was very difficult to get through.
Yes.
He kind of runs on a lot in almost every part. He gets way off topic and he'll just suddenly just start focusing on this one aspect that has nothing to do with the storyline, and you're like, okay, where the hell is this going? And then suddenly in a matter of like 3 sentences, the whole story will change. And you're just like, wait, what? What just happened?
In in order, like Nikki was just explaining, in order to give you a taste, just a sample, and not some of his literature problems that Nikki was just explaining. I am going to read for you one of Aleister's poems because he was a poem, and then I'll dive into kind of giving you his backstory. So this is an Aleister Crowley original. Let my fond lips but drink thy golden wine, my bright-eyed Arab. Only let me eat thick, rich brown globs of the sacramental meat, steaming and firm, hot from their home divine.
Oh, God. Oh, did you have to start it like that?
That's a good tone setter for
Yeah, that
Mr.
does actually
Crowley.
set the tone pretty well, I suppose.
I thought I actually before the episode I was looking at some other poems. Obviously, that poem, if you didn't catch it, is about him eating pee and poop. I'm a really big into breaking down the meanings of poems, so that's how I knew that. But I was actually thinking about like getting a few of his poems and seeing if you could guess if a gothic teenager or Aleister Crowley wrote the poem. But like his poems are either way too gross or way too bad to be attributed to teenagers. So I just left that idea and just thought I'd
That's sad.
that.
Well, thank you.
You are welcome, Mystic Nikki. So, for anyone listening, if Aleister Crowley sounds familiar, that's probably because your stepdad loved Ozzy Osbourne, or, or as I just mentioned, you probably went through a pretty heavy goth phase in high school, and good for you. So those, for everyone else who's new to Aleister, he's obviously, I think, not a D level celebrity. Let's maybe like an F level celebrity. He's around. Like I thought
I thought he was
I
more
thought he was
popular
more
than he
famous. Yeah.
actually was. I guess he really didn't
hmm
come to fame until after he died, sort of. Like, I mean, I guess he was enough that he got followers, from other places. He had followers in the United States, even though he was in London and Paris. So I guess he was known enough, but they also say that, he died like alone and, didn't have many loved ones in his life, I guess.
Yeah. So he's obviously he was mentioned in an Ozzy Osbourne song. His likeness is actually included on the Beatles album cover for Sgt. Pepper's and the Lonely Hearts Club. I think that's the right name. Sorry, old people, if you listen to this. Um, he's in the. I googled it before. He's in the very back. In the very back on the left-hand side, second from the
Yep.
end. He's like a creepy bald guy staring directly at your soul. You can't miss him. So if you want to Google that, you can see him. Or if your stepdad has that vinyl, go check it out. But he's not just the after note in a song or a beautiful person on an album cover. He was a mountaineer. We've already covered one of his poems, so he's a poem. A poet is the name of the people who do those. He is a black magician. He's also a sex magician, which is officially the coolest and lamest title you can have in one title. He was a drug addict. He was a self-identified genius
Oh, that's right.
and
Yes.
possibly a spy.
Possibly. There is some
Possibly.
documentation behind it. Not a whole lot, not enough to totally convince me, but it's a possibility. I'm sure if maybe we do a future episode on him, I'll look more into it and find out whether he really was.
Crowley was born way back in 1875. He was born to wealthy parents. His parents actually, his family, his father inherited money. His family owned a series of bars in the Great Britain. So they didn't really have to work. They were independently wealthy. He was born into it. And his family was also part of what I will call a Christian doomsday cult called the Plymouth Brethren, called the Plymouth Brethren.
You
I
don't like that word.
I don't. So we'll call it the PBs. They were in the PBs. And so he grew up wealthy in basically a fundamentalist Christian family. He was a good Christian boy. He was really into his dad. He idolized his dad. And then when he was in his teens, his dad passed away and he was kind of left with just his mom. And Aleister was just such a prick. He kind of considered his mom an idiot. So he stayed in contact with his mom for the rest of her life, but he would like write her letters and like just write her things to piss her off. There was a famous story of him sleeping with his family's maid in his mother's bed, and apparently letting his mother find out just to like insult her. So after his father died, he basically like did a 180 and just. I think the quote that was in the book was that he didn't change his beliefs; he just changed sides. So he still believed in Christianity, but he wanted to be on the side of Satan. There is some debate if you start calling him it is the cool side. Everything about Aleister Crowley, in theory, if you don't look too deep into it, is super cool. This guy was climbing mountains, writing poems, doing sex magic, all of this stuff. Like, you think about it, you're like, that's a cool, interesting dude. And then you get into it, and he's a spoiled, know-it-all, stinky guy who's just thinks he's the best, but can't write a book.
He summed it up so
well. And that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Aleister, after, again, he's growing up, he got really obsessed with committing kind of an unforgivable sin, and really kind of dove deep into magic and mysticism and the occult, and just was really interested in learning more about that side of Christianity, the flip side of the coin. I mentioned he was a mountaineer. He did go on several expeditions. He held some records for a while. I believe the longest, him and his team, they spent the longest amount of time at a certain altitude on K2 before people started climbing, like what's that big mountain, Nikki?
Everest?
The biggest. Yeah, that one. So before people before it was open to Europeans and everyone could climb it. He held some European records for that. He actually got himself kind of kicked out of the mountaineering community because he went on a climbing expedition with a group. He was nothing but trouble the whole time he was there. He complained about not being able to bring his poetry books, not being in. That's the correct response. When you're on when you're climbing a mountain and some creepy occult guy's like, "I need my poetry," you just giggle at him. So he's on this mountain. He's upset. He's not in charge. He ends up breaking off from the group, and the group gets in trouble. There's an avalanche, and supposedly he can hear the screams, and he does nothing to help them, and 3 people die. And that's a super truncated version of that story, and you can dive into it yourself, but that just gives you kind of an idea for the type of person we're dealing with.
Yeah, douche.
Douche indeed. So he grows up, he continues studying mysticism, but the story I'm going to jump into now is actually at 28 years old, he married his first wife, Rose Kelly. when they went on their honeymoon, it was 1904. And in 1904, you could go on your honeymoon to the Great Pyramids. And apparently, they would just let you into the pyramids and just let you fuck around and say, I'm a magician, and look at all of the. the statues and things.
I'm so jealous. I would love to just camp out inside of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, it did kind of sound like they were just camping there. I
Yeah, they
assume
did. They just camped there. They were there overnight.
that's super bizarre.
That'd be so cool.
I know.
Though they say that the Napoleon, I'm going to go way off here, but supposedly Napoleon went in there for a while and he came like running out and he was completely spooked. He wouldn't tell anybody what happened, but he would never go back in there.
He saw Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, Rose and Aleister are just chilling in the Great Pyramids, and apparently Rose wasn't super into the whole occult thing, his magician thing, but some visions started coming to her, and I think what actually happened was she pointed out a statue and she knew it was Horus, a messenger of Horus, and she wasn't into Egyptian mythology at all, and it was actually a statue of Horus. So she started getting these communications, and Crowley also got these visions, and he started seeing this spiritual being that he called Aiwass. And thank you, Nikki. I've been practicing the name all day, and then it was coming up. I saw it in the outline, and I started panicking, and I forgot it 4 times. So I do appreciate your claps, Nikki. I do deserve them. And Aiwass was Horus's personal messenger, and he basically spoke to the Crowleys. I don't know why I keep saying it like a jerk. He spoke to him, and he basically Aiwass dictated to Aleister the Book of the Law, which is basically the basis for would you call it a religion, Nikki?
Yeah, I think he considered it one.
Yeah, it's the religion, cult, group, after school activity, thelema. You're not going to clap on that one?
Oh.
Okay. So it's okay. So thelema is the name of the religion that Aleister Crowley started. And the Book of the Law, which Aiwass dictated to him, was the basis for that. Thelema is basically the Greek word for will, and their main tenet is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And you can 100% go on YouTube right now and listen to the Book of the Law and really creep out your coworkers. So make sure. The one I listened to, it was one of the ones where it's just the computer voice reading it. And it is terrifying. Not that it's it's mumbo jumbo, in my opinion. But the mysticism weirdness mixed with just like the monotone computer voice is truly terrifying.
I imagine it is.
So, and that's basically, I think, do what thy will it's a pretty good summary for Aleister himself.
Yeah, that's basically him.
And not like in a libertarian, don't tread on me, blah, blah, blah. I love the Constitution kind of way, but in a like squatters, people pooping in the corner, no one's doing the dishes, like we need to call child services kind of way. Which actually, to jump ahead just a little bit. Aleister he started a commune, I guess is what you would call it, in Italy during the time when Mussolini was in charge. And basically, because of poor living conditions, people just doing whatever they want, having sex whenever they want, not cleaning up after themselves, they were actually kicked out of Italy. For authoritarian fascist Italy for being too gross.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah, those people that were
Mussolini didn't
okay
like
with
you.
the Nazis were like, nah, man, you're stinky. You gotta
Yeah.
go. So, the some of the Book of the Law just it it basically proclaimed that humanity was entering a new eon,
Eon.
right? Eon,
Yeah.
yeah.
I should have said this before, but I kind of just let you go through with it. When they were inside the pyramid, yes, they were meditating, and that's when she got heard the voice of, telling her that he needs to go and meet this Iowas. But that didn't actually, the meditation happened inside the pyramid, but the instructions were for them to go to the statue that was inside the museum that was next to the Great Pyramid. So
Mm.
they actually went the next day, they went to the museum. She took him directly to the statue of Horus. And they'd never been to the museum before, so that was kind of like interesting that she knew exactly how to get there. She didn't know who Horus was, but took him straight to that statue, and it was there that he, for 3 days, was given the instructions.
Right.
So
Okay.
the stele of revealing from the museum, that's what they were basically, I guess the stele of revealing is the statue of Horus. So
Hmm.
he was supposed to take that out of the museum.
Huh.
Sorry, did I just totally overtake that?
No, that was great. Okay. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Rose and Alistair did have 2 children together. Unfortunately, Miss Nuit Ma Athohor Hector Sepho Jezebel Lilith Crowley died of typhoid at the age of 2, which is
Yes, that is one child, one name.
one 7-name name.
He couldn't
Eight.
do anything normal.
Yeah,
Can't even name his kids normal.
he couldn't. So tragedy, she died. I bet filling out the paperwork. Could you imagine the person who
Yeah.
had to like fill out that death certificate, and they're sad because it's a baby. They're like, oh, this is a bummer, but then they have to like write that name for twice as long, I guess, as they would have ever. Anyways, but there's the real victim, the person filling out the child's.
Yeah, not the
Yeah,
baby.
not the baby. They did eventually have a second child who had a much more normal name, Lola Zaza Crowley, who lived all the way up until 1990. She died at the age of 83, so she had a long life, so that's great. Alistair ended up having 5 kids, but not all with Rose because they actually ended up getting a divorce shortly after Lola was born. And by shortly, I mean 2 years. And Alistair was basically, he said he was frustrated with Rose's alcoholism.
Yeah. He also blamed her alcoholism for the death of their first baby, but, couldn't possibly be the fact that he made her bring the baby halfway across the world to some remote place in Asia, so that he could go and climb a mountain. Like,
Yeah.
that might not have been the best, living arrangement for a baby, but, what do I know?
Yeah. Are you saying babies aren't indigenous to the snowy mountains of the Alps? I thought that's where babies grew.
Yeah, when they come, that's where the storks live.
Yeah.
And they fly down here.
And honestly, Crowley has so many douchey adventures throughout his life. He gets in a fight with the Golden Dawn, thinks he's better than them. I already mentioned him getting kicked out of Italy. He legitimately, for how shitty he is kind of an interesting person, and it really goes to show you what you can achieve as long as you're born white, male, and wealthy in the West. You can be total garbage and still end up on a Beatles album.
Right.
So for all my downtrodden white wealthy men out there, buck up. You can still make it. But so we're gonna jump ahead to Aleister, who I failed to mention when his father died. Aleister, in roughly in the terms of early 1900s money, was a millionaire, is what he inherited when his father died. But he ended up having to go to America. He left Europe. And it seems very likely he was doing so to avoid debt collectors. And he basically was getting more and more into sexual magical rituals, and he had several what he called scarlet women, which is a super creepy thing to say to any woman. So again, all my rich, white, wealthy men, make sure you start using this term. It will work out well for you. Aleister had
Probably will, sadly.
yeah. The world is sometimes honestly just the worst. And Aleister,
Yes.
for not the reason, not like the cool, like magic, like I want to rebel reason, I'm 100% on board with that. He's bald, climbing mountains, rocking against the system, but just like somehow still such a whiny bitch that like I just can't like the guy. I want to, but I can't. So when he's in America and he's in New York, it's 1918. He actually found his favorite Scarlet Woman, Mary Diaz, who was basically the character he used Mary and put her in the book Moonchild. So that's again a super brief overview. We're jumping over so many fun things about Aleister. Maybe we'll jump in, we'll come back and circle back and cover more of his story or his interaction with the Golden Dawn. But now I think we want to go into the poop storm that is
Storm.
Moonchild.
Yay, my favorite book. So, like Zach said earlier, Moonchild was written in 1917, and it is about two battling magic factions, the White Lodge versus the Black Lodge. And this is basically after he kind of stepped away from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I think I said that right. So and it was kind of like they were in real life, they were kind of warring with each other. And when I say warring, I mean like they think that they're, conjuring magic spells against each other and they're defending themselves from these attacks. And all I can think of is, oh, what was that movie with with the little mice? Where he
Cinderella?
stuffs no, the taxidermy, like he stuffs the mice and he creates those little
Oh, Dinner for Schmucks? Oh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
at the
yeah.
end when they have that magical battle.
Oh,
So
yes.
yes, that's what I think is what they actually were
Oh
doing.
my gosh. If anyone has seen that movie, I really do think Zach Galifianakis in that movie, like the magician, is Aleister Crowley in real life.
Yeah.
Like, if you're like, who is this man? Like, go see that movie, see that person, and then like give that guy $1 million, and that's Aleister Crowley.
Totally. So in the book, he pretty much all the main characters in the book were based off of real life people that he was either friends with or enemies with. The main character was himself, of course. His name was Cyril Gray in the book. And basically, that character is like the smartest human being on the planet. He can't do anything wrong. He knows everything that's going to happen. He can tell what everybody's thinking. He's just amazing. Um, and then the bad guy in the book, his name is Douglas, and this actually is supposed to represent McGregor Mathers, who was the chief of the Second Order of the Golden Dawn. And he actually, I mean, he portrays him in the book as like this evil, horrible human being, like, forcing his wife to prostitute herself so that he could have money. And whenever he talks about his own, like whenever Crowley talks about their magical rituals and ceremonies, it's kind of, and there's a lot of sex behind it, but they're also kind of pretty, though. Some of the settings and stuff like that, a lot of flowers and incense and stuff like that. And whereas Mather's ceremonies are always like killing animals and drinking blood and nasty, disgusting stuff with like human corpses and whatever. And the lady that's going to be carrying the demon child in the book, his name is Lisa La Guifria?
Your guess is as good as mine, man.
I'm just going to say Lisa.
We'll go with
her
Lisa.
Name. Lisa. And she represents Mary Diest in real life. So there are other characters in the book that he that were friends and or whatnot in real life, but we're not going to go into all of them. So it kind of starts off really strangely. This Lisa and her friend are having this party. I believe it was Lisa's birthday, and she's waiting. She's got this like prophecy where she's going to receive, I think it was 11 gifts or 13 gifts. I can't remember exactly what it is. And she has one less than what she was expecting. And it's like, which again reminds me of a TV, back to a movie reference. It's like in the Harry Potter when his cousin freaks out because he didn't have more presents that year than.
I'm so glad that was your reference, because that was the reference in my head too when you started, when you're like, oh, a movie, and I was like, oh, it's like in Harry Potter, but I was like, Nikki will have a cooler reference than that, but nope.
This is me you're talking about.
That's why we're friends, Nikki.
So she doesn't get all the presents that she was expecting to get, and she's waiting. And then that's when Crowley's character, Cyril Gray, enters the room, and he, he doesn't say hi or, hey, what's going on? Happy birthday. No, he just goes and he sits in the middle of the room, like on the floor, and just doesn't say anything and just like stares off into nothing. And she thinks he's really strange, but somehow by the end of the evening, she's like totally entranced by him and like falling in love with him. And he didn't do anything. So this is just like how amazing he is, that he can make people fall in love with him without saying a word.
And not only like, God, I try not to get mad when I think about Aleister Crowley, but not only does he just sit in the middle of the room and like, he, like in the book, if you read it, which again, we do not suggest you do, but like, he's like a weirdo. It's just the strangest thing that like Aleister thinks that like this person who he identifies with can walk into this party, not talk to anyone, stand in the middle of the room, just creep everyone out, and the hottest girl in the room is gonna absolutely fall in love with him. And he's like, this book makes perfect sense.
You mean that's not how it works?
I mean, in my experience,
I would have totally fallen for him.
Oh my God. Who's that stinky bald man who keeps muttering magic spells to himself? I must meet him.
So the next couple days, Lisa, she's like constantly thinking about him, and she's like becoming obsessed with him, and he's kind of leading her on, and then eventually they decide, okay, they're going to try to bring her into this magic order. And she says that she's interested in joining. The initiation ceremony, after several attempts by the Black Lodge to thwart their attempts to bring her into the group, they finally get her into this lodge, and she is told to go and sit in this small room. It's like a small chapel, and the room has, at the northern part of the room, a doorway with curtains, white curtains, where they told her if she at any point during the ceremony wants to leave and doesn't want to go through with it, she could go out that way. I know there's some kind of symbology to going through the north direction. I don't understand what it means because I don't follow magic, but
We should.
when she crosses, yeah, I should probably read a little bit
I
more
want.
about it, but
I do.
at some point.
When Philip gets back, we should. One day we're gonna surprise him, and we'll both know like a ton about magic, and we'll be super creepy about it. We should.
Well, remember I did cast a spell on you once, and actually I think it worked.
Wait.
Now that I think about it,
What did you?
You got a job.
Well, to be fair, I had a job before. She cast a spell on me to get a different job. I wasn't like some homeless person that Nikki took magical pity on.
I wanted you to get a better job.
Yes.
There we go. That's better.
And I did. Yeah. Make sure you. Thank you, Nikki.
Don't send me magic books. This is what happens.
It worked.
Oh, back to Lisa. So she's sitting in this room. When she walks into the room, she has to cross over this circle that has been drawn on the floor, and she's instructed not to touch it as she crosses over it. Again, some kind of magical significance. I don't know what it is. In the center of the room is a small altar. It has 10 lamps set on top of 10 iron stars. There's also a leather stool that she's allowed to sit on. She goes inside and she's all by herself, and she's just sitting there for a long time. Nothing's going on, and it's pretty boring. And then after a while, a sliver of light comes through the top of the chapel, and it falls on the altar. And then this light, it starts to create these strange hallucinations, and she starts to believe that she's seeing like magicians and images of Cyril, who is Crowley, and another woman in a provocative embrace. So basically, they're getting it on, and she is not happy about seeing this. She actually is really, really upset during it. She's like freaking out, and she's almost like tempted to leave, but she sticks it out and she stays. And then so this girl comes running in towards the end of the night. I mean, at this point she doesn't really even know what time it is. It's been several hours, but so this girl comes running in, and she's like, we gotta get out of here, and she's trying to get Lisa to leave with her. But Lisa, thinks about it for a little bit, but then decides, no, I'm going to stick with it. And she decides to stay, but she helps the girl escape. She tells her to go through that doorway. She even gives her her clothes so that she could get out safely. So the girl leaves, and then just like a little bit later, they come in and they're like, yay, you succeeded. You have joined the order. So Lisa's all happy, and now she has Cyril Gray, and they're, happy making out, and
everything a girl could want. She joined a creepy cult and got the stinky guy of her dreams.
So, and I gotta stop saying so.
It's hard to come up with a...
It is hard to. Well,
Therefore,
the Black Lodge, they know that they successfully got her to join the order. So they're like pissed off and they're trying to stop them. They do some crazy things, but of course, Cyril Gray knows what's going to happen and he calls it, and he's like, is two steps ahead of them, and they end up leaving. I think they were at this point, they were in Paris, and they leave and they go to Naples, Italy. And this is where the Moonchild ceremony actually takes place. It's like this nice little, it's supposed to be this nice house, and it's got, already has all these magical guards already like been set around the outside of the house, to keep out bad magic and stuff like that. And there's a couple there's, I believe, three or four women that are there. They're like the housekeepers, and then there's like the same amount of men who are guarding the house. The head housekeeper is Sister Clara. She's kind of, not only is she the housekeeper, like she's taking care of the house, she's also taking care of the magical spells, guarding the house as well, and she's taking care of Lisa. So when Lisa gets there, she's the one that, like, she's going to be the one that's going to hold the child. So everything is kind of revolving around her. And the head guy, the head guard, his name is Brother Onofrio. He is in charge of the defense of the house, along with Crowley. Crowley's character, Cyril. I think they don't. I don't know if they outwardly say this at any point, but you kind of get the feeling that this Brother Onofrio is Crowley's lover, and I think he was supposed to represent somebody in real life. More than likely, it was his lover in real life as well.
Yeah, I don't know how we got this far. I guess because I covered Aleister. He is like famously also bisexual. So if that's
Yeah,
coming,
we didn't mention that, did we?
yeah, he was so into just breaking any norms that he was in relationships with men, women. There's rumors of other kind of sexual things. He wrote obviously stories about poop and pee and enjoying that. So you just let your imagine run wild, and the grosser and grosser it gets, you just see Crowley there with two thumbs up, being like, "Yeah."
Yeah. Oh, back to the little chateau or whatever it is. Everything inside of this house is inspired by the moon. There's camphor incense burning like all the time. The only food that, well, at least I think everybody else was allowed to eat whatever they wanted, but Lisa was only allowed to eat food like cream, soft curded cheese, crescent cakes, milk, cane sugar, egg whites,
Moon pies.
venison, shellfish, moon pies, because they were there then. Kind of a limited diet, but she got to eat decent. I guess she got some protein in there. She's allowed to have venison and shellfish. So for clothing, she had a outfit that was like a pale blue robe, and it had like silver tissue hanging off of it. So it was very like ethereal kind of feeling. There were sigils of the moon were woven into it, and it was supposed to be like she was wrapped in the mist of moonlight. Ooh, how pretty. In the gardens around the house, there were lilies everywhere. Once again, associated with the moon. And this is in this garden. This is where most of the ceremonies took place, and this is where Lisa spent most of her time, was out there. So it was kind of like a long build-up to there. I mean, there's many parts of the Moonchild ceremony. There's like a whole part where she's kind of getting ready for it, and then the actual real ceremony starts, where they are reenacting the capture of Diana from Greek mythology. Or no, excuse me, Diana was a Roman mythology, I believe. Right? No,
No
no, no.
Greek?
Diana was Greek. Yeah, that's right.
It's
Okay.
all Greek to me.
So reenacted the capture of Diana by Pan. So this is the three guards and the housekeepers, along with Crowley and Lisa, that reenact this capture of her. Um, who was supposed to be, it was basically this Greek counterpart of Artemis, who was the Olympian goddess of the hunt, the moon, and chastity. So she was like the goddess of the night, whereas Apollo was the god of the day. After this ceremony, after this reenactment, basically it is just like a full month of sex. Her and Crowley are just going at it for a month here, like straight. Then there's like nothing. So it just goes from complete, like she's totally infatuated with him and they're always like on each other, and then there's just nothing. During this time, she actually, she doesn't even have any like interaction with Crowley, because he is supposed to be the sun and she's the moon, and he doesn't want to interfere in her moonlight. So it's the only interaction she has is with the maids and the sister Clara. And during this time, she's kind of like in this really weird, basically lazy state where she's outside most of the time. She sleeps during the day and she's awake at night, but even during the night, she's like taking naps all the time. It's basically all she's doing is laying around, eating, and staring up at the moon. Real exciting.
Sounds like me in college.
Did you eat a lot of cheese in college?
Apparently. I just stared up at the moon, eating cheese, crying to myself.
Nice. During this time, the Black Lodge, you can't forget about them. They are trying to stop what's going on. So at first, they don't even know where they are, because of course Cyril cleverly evades all their attempts to follow them down there. So they are able to escape and come down to Naples, Italy, and then the Black Lodge spends several months trying to figure out where they are. But eventually they figure out where they're staying, and they're trying to do their own magic to interrupt this Moonchild ceremony. There's a couple interesting attempts and stuff like that, but I'm not going to get too much into that. There is one guy that is persistent. I think his name is Abdul, and he will come up a little bit later in this, actually pretty soon in this. She's in these weird dream state where she's like half dreaming, half awake most of the time, and she's completely devoted to the moon. She starts having these really strange dreams about the moon, and all these weird visions about everything. And she eventually starts to kind of get fed up with the whole thing, which big surprise. And these visions start, and she kind of feels like she has this one like main vision where she really enjoys the vision, and she gets really super involved in it, and she thinks that everything is really, like she's finally gonna have this moon child and stuff like that. And then she kind of finds out that it's sister Clara is kind of creating these visions inside her head, and she gets super mad about it, and she really detests this lady. And this is really hard to follow, but it's just kind of like out of nowhere. It feels like while you're reading this, she's talking about these visions and she's getting really upset. And then the next thing you know, she's like in the city. She's not in the house anymore. She's somewhere else, and she runs into this Abdul guy who was a member of the Black Lodge, and they just like escape together. I don't know is that the same impression that you got, Zach? I know it was a while ago, but
Yeah, that's the same impression I got.
it's
It's like kind of out of left field, right?
Mm-hmm. It really felt like all of a sudden. Then that's like what we were talking about earlier. The way his writing style is he gets super detailed about the littlest things and sucked into something, and then it's like he's trying to finish the actual storyline, that part of the story. And so he just quickly shoves in like what just happened in 2 sentences, and you're like, wait, what? Like, what just
Yeah,
happened?
it's like
So,
paragraph and after paragraph of like nonsensical dialogue between two magicians, like just asking each other rhetorical questions and answering with other rhetorical questions, just for like pages, and then like in a really short paragraph, it will be like, and then she ran away with it, and you're like, wait, what? Did I miss something? After
yeah.
like all like the moon symbolism that you've just been going on about for like the last 3 pages. So yes, that is exactly how I felt about that book.
Yeah, yeah. So the guy that she runs away with, they actually elope, and his name is Abdul Bey. And this Abdul was kind of like obsessed with her too for some reason throughout the whole thing. Like he had met her before the ceremony, and he really liked her, and then he kind of was obsessed to the point where he was just going crazy, doing all these horrible magic experiments to try to get her to away from Crowley. Um, and so she's gone, and they've escaped, and Crowley goes back to London or Paris, I don't remember where. And he's talking to somebody, and they're talking about, oh, well, I heard that she's been, that sucks. And he's like, oh no, I knew that was going to happen. That was part of like my master plan all along. Of course. And then says,
Which I think it's important to remember for everyone who's at a job right now, sooner or later, you're going to fuck up. Like, you're just going to mess up. And just follow the Aleister Crowley method of saying, oh no, that thing where everything went wrong, that was actually my plan the entire time. I'm a genius, poet, sex magician. That's how you have to finish. That was my plan the whole time.
yes, and that is exactly what he said. Though he said that the whole Moonchild ceremony and all of it was just a diversion for a member of his lodge named Sister Sybil. I think in real
That
life her name was
bitch.
Layla Waddell. She was one of Crowley's Scarlet Women. So back to Lisa and Abdul. They're on their honeymoon. They're on a yacht in the Mediterranean somewhere, and suddenly her face starts getting fat. Which I always thought was so strange. I don't think for once did he say that like her belly was getting fat. He just says her face is getting fat and she's getting sick. I wonder what could be wrong, after that month of sex. So,
Can't imagine why
um,
women don't really want to stay with him. They like definitely are interested in him, and then he just says things like, "Oh yeah, we had sex like 9 months ago, and I just want you to know, you're looking pretty fat."
it's just what every woman wants to hear at 9 months pregnant.
Thank you.
So, buddy, remember she's with Abdul right now. But of course, yes, she's pregnant and she has the baby. And this baby, it pops out of her. I don't know what the sound was. I'm just saying that she popped out. But this baby, it's a girl, and she's born with deep blue eyes, 4 teeth already, silver white hair that is already 6 inches long, and she has a tattoo already of a crescent moon that's like a faint blue color. So, yes, she is the child of the moon.
It's
So,
a hardcore
yes, if
baby.
during his diversion that he was, that the whole Moonchild ceremony wasn't really supposed to be the point of it all, but he does accomplish having a Moonchild as well because he's just amazing. But apparently he doesn't care too much because he just kind of leaves her and she's off with Abdul and they have the baby. But those two of them, because they're jerks, don't like the baby and they don't want to take care of it, so they just give it away. And the person just takes it to America. So baby's gone. And it seems like as soon as the baby leaves, the love spell between Lisa and Abdul just like disappears, and they don't really like each other anymore, and they split ways, and Lisa goes back home. When she gets home, she's back to thinking about Cyril again, of course, because you can't forget him. He's amazing. And she eventually does run into him again, and she tells him about the baby, and he tells her basically go and get the baby. And that is, well, it's not quite it. It's the end of the Moonchild story, but then he goes for several pages and talks about the war that's breaking out.
It's like, here's another nerdy reference I know you'll like, Nikki. It's like in Lord of the Rings, at the very end,
Yes.
or like the books where like they get they destroy the ring, and then they walk back, and then there's like the invasion of the Shire, and you're like, I thought this book was done, and like it's obviously, one, not as good at writing, and two, it's
A very poor version.
yeah. So it's very generous for me to mention Aleister Crowley and Tolkien and the same,
Tolkien.
but it's like a similar thing where you're reading and you're like, why isn't this done? Why am I still reading this book? You told me the end, and that's really how I felt when I was like, what? Like, again, it
Yeah.
just kind of switches on a dime, and
It's like, yeah, because like he finishes the story, but then, this is right before, nope. Yes, right before World War One is about to break out. So
nope,
it's like in his, what?
nope,
No? No?
nope.
Am I getting the time wrong again?
1914.
Oh my god damn it. I don't know what's going on then. I don't know why he was thinking about the war.
Well, I mean, it's like those. It's people who write like historical fiction, and you like write yourself into it. So he's like, oh, like there's this big magical battle, and like World War I. It's like comic books do it all the time, but most of the time they do it with Nazis and stuff. Like, oh, like Captain
Nazis.
America fought the Red Skull, and he was a Nazi, and so it's like it's revisionist history,
I
just like
see. He's
putting
so smart.
making you what?
I said, you're so smart.
Because I said revisionist history.
I
I
don't
like wrote that
know.
on the palm of my hand earlier today, and I've just been looking for a moment to insert into the conversation. So, right or wrong, I'm going to include it in here.
Well, so there you go. So yes, he starts talking about the war that's breaking out, and that goes on about that for a couple more pages, and then you're done. The whole thing is over, and I was so happy when it was done.
Woo! You did it.
It was so horrible. Please don't read this book. It's
This
really not
book
worth it.
is I was so excited to read this book because, I mean, you hear about Aleister Crowley, and obviously his nickname, his mother gave him the nickname the B666. And like you hear all the wickedest man in the world, and you think it's going to be so cool. It really is the equivalent of like your whole life being like, oh, this is the hardest drug. Like if you take it, it's going to mess up your life, and then you get there and you eat it, or you take it, and it's essentially eating like Brussels sprouts, and you're like, this wasn't cool at all. This was actually just normal and kind of bad.
Yeah.
I actually like Brussels sprouts. Sorry, Brussels sprouts. Again,
But
I
we,
apologize to Tolkien and Brussels sprouts for comparing them.
yes. Well, so he wasn't the only one that performed the Moonchild ritual, even though Crowley never said that he tried to do it in real life. It was all just in the book. But Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard actually tried to reenact their own Moonchild ceremony several years later. Um, those of you, I'm sure most of you know who L. Ron Hubbard is, but if you don't, he is the creator of Scientology. Yay, which I actually live like 5 miles from one of the major centers for Scientology. Woohoo! He also, he wrote, what is it, Dianetics, which
Hmm.
was kind of like the basis of it. So he's kind of a famous dude. And then he did it along with Jack Parsons, who's also pretty famous. He was a rocket scientist. What was the JPL?
Yep.
No. Yeah,
Ah,
JPL.
this is what we need Philip for.
He started JPL. He was all into jet propulsion, and he was a very smart dude. But in his personal life, he had some questionable things going on, and he was a big follower of Thelema. Yeah, that. So, in 1939, he joined the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was, thank you. So we both got applause for saying a word.
Same words.
Yeah, this is a
We give out
podcast.
participation trophies in this podcast.
uh, so which was all about magic. And he and his wife joined together, and they took part in these wife swapping parties and stuff. And eventually, she just left with another man. Eventually, but poor guy.
Which I don't know if you've ever heard like the Rodney Dangerfield joke, like "take my wife, please" kind of thing. This was like he really wanted to be a part of this group. I think that
So
joke will really
she left
land with the
him.
kids.
Yeah, I'm sure they know who that is. But I'm just gonna skip through. I'm not gonna go all like in depth with Jack Parsons' life, even though he's a pretty cool guy. But so he's hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard, and they decide that they want to attempt the Moonchild ritual. They kind of adapted it to their own surroundings and stuff, and they called it the Babylon Workings. So they wanted to invoke the elemental force or goddess called Babylon. So the first thing that he asked for in series of ceremonies and rituals is he needed a elemental mate. So he needed his own Scarlet Woman, and so he went out into the Mojave Desert, and he did all this stuff, saying, I want this mate, blah, 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 blah. And then he says that he was out there meditating and he felt this like snap of tension. And he knew at that moment that, the ritual had worked. And so he packed up and he went home. And sure enough, when he got home, there was a lady waiting for him, and her name was Marjorie Cameron. And so she becomes the Scarlet Woman, and they continue with the ceremonies, a series of Babylon workings. And during this time, Marjorie says that she sees a UFO. Oh, it always comes back to aliens. And she tells Parson about this, and he believes that, oh, yes, this is the materialization of Babylon. Everything is working. We're on track. So he's happy. And during this, L. Ron Hubbard is also taking part of it. And he is like, basically he's channeling these spirits or whatever, and he's like chanting out what these things that this spirit is supposed to be saying to him or whatnot. And all the while, Parsons and Marjorie are like totally having crazy sex in the room. And this
Wow.
is like, yeah. So this is all going on for several days. And then it's done. I don't think Parsons actually believes that she got pregnant at that time. Well, they weren't sure, but then things kind of like drift away from the ceremony, and throughout the whole the process. Parsons was actually in touch with Crowley. Crowley at this time is getting up in age because this is like the late 1940s. So Crowley is what, like 75 or so at this time, right? Yeah, 65, 70. And he's not doing well, of course, because he's been doing drugs his entire life. But he's still, his brain is still functioning and stuff. And he's encouraging them. But secretly, he actually is quoted to be saying to somebody, I get fairly frantic when I contemplate the idiocy of these louts. So here he is encouraging Parsons in these letters, but then he's really saying, like, these guys are idiots. So that's pretty bad. If Crowley thinks you're a moron, like, that's not a
Yeah.
good thing. But then again, who is Crowley to say that? I mean, what did he end up accomplishing? Not a whole lot. Whereas Jack Parsons, he shot rockets up to the moon.
I wonder, like, honestly, if you did like a poll of the American population, who would be more well known? Which is like really upsetting because like my gut feeling is that Aleister Crowley would be slightly like they would both probably be
Yeah.
really low recognition, but like
Hmm.
I feel like Aleister would still be because of Ozzy Osbourne and stuff like that. He would be more recognizable, and it's like kind
Yeah.
of he was just a stinky rich kid who liked to have sex and do weird things.
Yep. Though Jack Parsons, he wasn't, even though he was very smart and good at what he was doing, he had a lot of issues. I mean, I think he ended up blowing himself up in the end. I'm pretty sure that's how he died.
Really?
Yeah, one of his experiments, I think he blew himself up.
Oh,
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I'll probably gonna get yelled at for saying that.
I did not know that.
um, so Hubbard and Parsons, their friendship kind of fizzled pretty soon after this. Once again, Parsons loses his lady friend to another man, which is unbelievable because I think L. Ron Hubbard is the ugliest human being. But not that everything should be physical, but even internally, he was pretty nasty. He stole his lady, and they like went off. They stole like $20,000 of Parsons' money, and they
And a boat,
went
right?
off. Yeah, like, well, they bought the boats with the $20,000
Damn it.
and went down to the Caribbean, and yeah, and basically spent all his money. And I don't know, there was this whole big lawsuit going about. I'm not going to go in depth with that. But so back to the Moonchild ceremony that they did. There are many theories to who this Moonchild could actually be in real life, because the lady Marjorie Cameron, she actually claims that she actually did get pregnant afterwards. Big surprise again. And though she says that the fetus was taken from her and it was brought to Robert Oppenheimer and others at the Manhattan Project. The fetus was placed in one of the bombs they dropped on Japan. So I guess they put it in some kind of special canister and
Just saran wrap will do.
that's right. And dropped it on Japan, and it survived. And then who knows? After that, I don't know what happens to the fetus. This is just really coming from the dregs of the internet, which can get really scary when you're trying to dig in for stuff. um, but Jack Parsons was quoted at this time in saying, and within 7 years of this time, Babylon, the Scarlet Woman Hilarion, will manifest among ye and bring this my work to fruition. So he believes that, yeah, that they had a Moonchild and the whole thing went perfectly, and that there is a demon walking among us. So who could it be?
Lock her up. Lock her up.
Yes, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Diane Clinton. Yes. So the theory is because she was born in 1948, so it was perfect time. She's evil. And has lots of power and all that. And there was this really strange article. She did this interview a few years ago, and I don't remember exactly what was said, but the interviewer was making a point that Hillary doesn't sweat. Like you never see her sweating when she's doing speeches or interviews or whatever. And so Hillary Clinton jokingly says, "Oh, you figured it out. I'm a robot. I was created." And stuff. So of course these theories point to that interview saying, yes, she even admits it. She's not human. See? It's like, yeah, that's a little bit pushing it. But that's really all
I
you
mean, technically, a
Yeah.
Moonchild isn't a robot. It's still a human child with an ethereal being inside of it. That's my nerdy white dude response to other nerdy white dudes on the internet.
But that's all you can find for Moonchild ceremonies. I can't find any reference to anything more, anybody famous that's tried to do one or any other theories out there, of who could be the Moonchild or whatnot. So there you have it.
That is it. Moonchild. Whew.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Don't read it.
You guys,
Really, don't read it.
If you listen this far, we have to tell you, one, it's not only listening or reading the book. It is, we have tried to record this multiple times. So we really wanted you to hear about Moonchild. So we are so thankful that you stuck to the end. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes. And we really were trying to shorten this up because we've had 2 episodes so far that were like an hour and a half long each or something. And here we are again at another almost hour and a half.
We'll be better soon.
We will get better at this. We promise.
We pinky promise. And we also pinky promise Philip will be back with us when we record next time. Look for that episode out here in a few weeks after this episode drops. Make sure that you follow us on social media. We are on Instagram at A Brief Gaze Pod. I do want to give a shout out to Joelle. Thank you so much for commenting on our photo. So you get your shout out. Here it is. I'm sure you're definitely listening to this, Joelle. And you can also follow us on Twitter. Nikki, what's our Twitter handle?
A Brief Gaze Pod.
Ooh, we are so consistent.
Creative.
So we are creative. So check us out, and we will be back in a couple weeks with another strange episode about the weird things we all believe. And until we are back, please remember, believe in yourself.
And magic.
Woo!
And aliens.
Get it in there.